related to what I presented and what you presented. I already tried to reply to some questions in the chat. As the system of raising hands doesn't seem to be too clear to me. If some of the attendants would like to raise questions taking the floor, please ask for the floor in the chat, and then when I say your name, you can unmute yourself and put your questions. Before we do that, a couple of reminders. First, all the recordings, the documents, the slides will be available after the meeting in the coming days, for sure before the end of this week. And we will use the link where we uploaded the privacy statement to also upload all the other documents. And the second thing is that today we are talking about the DPP systems. Okay, so I know that a lot of the questions are focusing on the DPP data, what kind of data will be there, the verification of data, etc. Those are all extremely relevant questions, but today we are not addressing those. There will be future occasions, future meetings when we will start working on dedicated product groups where those questions will become the main focus of the meeting. But today I would really like to ask you to focus all your questions on the DPP system, so on the architecture of the DPP itself. Okay, so let me see. I see Jeremy Orion, who is asking for the floor. Jeremy, please take the floor and ask your question. And please, if you can say who you work for or where you come from, just to qualify yourself. Thank you.
Yes, sure. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Perfect. Hello, this is Jeremy Orion. I'm working for Toyota Boshoku Europe. We are a tier 1 supplier for automotive OEMs. So my question was about, sorry, something you explained at the beginning of your presentation. So you explained that DPP would be used in other regulations. Is it known already if it's going to be used in end-of-life vehicle directive?
As far as I mean, we are finalizing that piece of legislation. I think the adoption is foreseen in July, if I remember correctly. As far as I know, there is no specific link to the DPP for the time being. But again, I don't want to preempt any final decision because there are still ongoing discussion. It is something that colleagues have looked at when drafting the legislation. We're discussing internally, but I don't know at this stage if any final decision on that has been taken or not.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, then I see that I will surely mispronounce the name. Abhijet Kelkar has asked for the floor.
Yes, indeed. You have pronounced it correctly. Thank you. Yeah. I had 2-3 questions. I have been working on this issue of the circularity model. My first question is, would the Digit group be interested in a collaborative approach where we could give our learnings into this whole thing? Because we have built up something called an ecosystem-based approach where there are value drivers for each participant of the group leading up to a product recycling process. Is there a possibility there? Or is it only you set certain standards and you follow it thoroughly there?
I mean, we should discuss details because, of course, that's not enough information to provide a final answer. But in general, when it comes to the DPP system, the idea is to provide this set of standards that then will allow different providers service providers to develop their own DPP, in the sense that everything then should be interoperable because everything relates on the same set of standards. So if there are other ways of providing the information that will be required through legislation, and that information is provided in a way that is compliant with the standards, those systems, it will be possible to technically link to the DPP. But of course, we need to discuss to see the details.
Yeah. So, who is the person I should take contact with for this discussion?
Well, I suggest, I mean, the entry point for discussion on the DPP system is me as a chair of the Commission working group on that, and then I have luckily a number of colleagues who are expert in different sub branches of the problem. So if you want to discuss anything specific, I would say not now, because this is an extremely intense period in terms of the negotiation, as William hopefully will explain to you afterwards. But maybe, let's say, after the summer break, we can get in touch, and then maybe you can provide us with more information, and from there we can see if and how we can have a conversation about that.
Yeah, because the reason for this is we have worked on this for around 14 years on the whole concept of the digital product passport, and we have a lot of information about how things would work and why people would be motivated. Means you have two options. One is you make some laws and you have a lot of machinery to enforce those laws, and it becomes kind of something which people don't want to participate in. So what we have done in our model is we have built value drivers for manufacturers, retailers, the users, and to the end of product life cycle. What happens is, because of these value drivers, people are interested in using the whole digital product passport because it adds value to their whole use. That's the thought process we have worked on. And I believe there's a lot of intellectual property there and so on, which could definitely help in this digital passport journey, because it will take you 5 years to even think through the business model. And with a committee, I think it will be still more. But I from my experience, I can definitely say it will take a long time for you to build a system which functions properly. So that is where I could contribute with, my company could contribute with, and yeah.
Okay.
And
Okay.
the email, should I have an email which could be given, which I could follow up on after summer?
I will provide it in the conclusion. I have slides with the
contributions. Okay.
Stay with us until the end.
Thank you.
Okay, Nancy Norris, please take the floor.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep. Great,
thanks. Thank you, Michele. I just had a question for you about the slide, Joao's slide about the design thinking scenarios. It showed that option D and option C have not been discarded. I'm wondering whether you are considering either of those two options to continue in your decision-making process, or whether you are going to be just choosing one of those two options.
I can take this one if you
want.
Go ahead. So you will get the slides. I could share the slide as well. But essentially, as explained, we are having a first modeling approach. So the idea is that we are creating the different scenarios, and we are seeing what are the pros and cons of each one of them, and then trying to eliminate the cons by mixing it with some other scenario. So it's this type of iterative approach that we are taking. So first we need to understand the scenario itself. Then we analyze, okay, what are the good and the bad of each one of them? And then can we retain the good, right? And eliminate the bad by mixing them. That's what you will see. Going further into speculation at this point in time, I think would not be productive, but indeed, it is already quite clear by the slides the kind of process that we are engaging in.
Okay, so it could end up being a mix of option D and option C, depending on your findings.
Yeah, correct. You will see that there is already the mix one. It's the one that then we showed as option E. That is a mix of C and D. This is just an example. Again, we might, remix things again, but indeed, the pure scenarios are sometimes very theoretical. And when it comes to actual implementation, it requires mixing, the elements from different approaches so that we get something that is more optimal to the community that we are discussing here.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Joao. Matthias Reuter, please.
Hello. Hi.
Hi.
My name is Matthias Reuter. I'm working for the German Home Textile Association. I'm in charge of the circular economy topics and about topics of sustainability. And I'm working in the German DIN group in a standardization project. It's called Circular Textiles, as a mirror committee to the TEN project with the same name, Circular Textiles. My question is, if these ideas you presented today of digital product passport one day will be in operation, let's say maybe for the products who are now in the focus at the ESPR report, then we have trillions of products who are marked with a identifier with a code, and at every stage of the value chain, from producer until the recycler, some people will want to have access to the information, and at every point you want to have access, you will ask information from a decentralized server, as I understood. This will need energy. So my question is, could you give an estimation what total energy consumption you will need for this kind of system?
Okay, I will get to your question, but before I need to clarify two things that probably are not completely correct, or we didn't explain it in a fully comprehensible way. The DPP will not necessarily be available on millions of products, in the sense that in the legislation, in the ESPR, we anticipate that there will be three potential granularity levels: the model, the batch, and the item. And it will be a decision product group by product group, what is the right level of granularity for that product group. We expect that in many cases, the batch level will be the baseline scenario, and we will go to the item level when there are clear reasons to go in that direction. For example, the item level becomes relevant when repairability or recycling is or refurbishment is a clear element of the life cycle where we need information. So for those products where the circularity plays a major role, for those products, we will go to the item level. For the products, like for example, textile, well, probably, this is my assumption, the circularity component of the life cycle in terms of the repairability, for example, is not strategic from a DPP perspective, then we may not go to the item level, we will stop at the batch level. And that automatically reduces enormously the amount of DPP that will have to be created. So it's not always necessarily millions or billions, it may be less in terms of numbers of DPP. The second thing that is important to keep in mind is that the DPP that we are bringing forward through the SPR is a DPP that is created by the economic operator placing the product on the market. It's not a DPP that is created by the whoever starts the product extraction of raw materials, for example, and then moves the information to the next supplier, and then moves the information to the next supplier. That is not the DPP. So access to the components will not be at each stage, but it will be the final manufacturer that will ask to the different suppliers the information. So the number of access will be also less than what might seem from the way you put the question. Now, having said all that, of course, there will still be energy requirements related to the DPP. And of course, those energy requirements will also depend on some technological choices. For example, for some of the features of the DPP, you may decide, you as an economic operator, you may decide to use blockchain, or you may decide not to use blockchain. We will probably allow both systems. For us, what is important is the function delivered, is not how you deliver the function. And of course, if you use blockchain, you will have higher energy consumption. And even within blockchain, you know that there are different blockchains that have different consumption. So all this to say that when we will do the legislation at product group level, the delegated act at product group level, as part of the impact assessment for that delegated act, we will also look at the environmental implications of having a DPP for that product group. It was not possible to do this in the general impact assessment of ESPR because there were too many variables, as I'm trying to explain. So it would have made no sense to have a study at such a higher level. We will have it when the boundaries of the systems will be better defined.
For me, in my point of view, it would be very interesting if you, in the future process, you provide maybe 2 or 3 scenarios regarding energy consumption that ones can see, the different ways and have it in mind to balance the benefits of processing textile, for example, to a recycling process, providing the information, and on the other side to see which energy impact this would be meaning. You understand?
Yeah, that's very clear. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Solange, please, you are the next one.
Thanks, Michele. Nice to see you. I have a question. I don't know whether it's for you or for Joao Rodrigues. Well, we have a very strict timeline for delivering the standards within the standardization request. By somewhere 2025, we should have a very long pile of standards, a lot of paper that has protocols, that has requirements, that has all types of things that are associated to the DPP, but we don't have a system yet. So how you're envisioning to prepare or to produce, or how this system will come into place? Is this something that the European Commission is planning? So when I talk about system, I talk about software to make the DPP a reality. So is the European Commission preparing something, thinking about something? Is this something that's going to be commercial tool providers to do? So how is that will come into place? That's my question. Thank you.
I have the feeling that this is more for Joao to address from a technical viewpoint. I can reply from the political viewpoint. Joao, do you want to start?
Yes, I can start. As explained, we have quite some experience when it comes to move specifications into reality, right? And if you notice, one of the tools to do that when it comes to services that the Commission can provide is that one of doing it for the ecosystem, right? We typically don't favor that type of approach. We prefer that we enable the ecosystem, but the ecosystem participates as much as possible with either the DPP readers that were shown in the user journey, with the creation of the data carrier, with the hosting of the DPP. As you can understand, and I think it's obvious, the Commission cannot do this on its own. It would be just impractical. Nonetheless, and this is something that will be discussed, we can provide a number of tools, helpers, time savers that will enable the ecosystem to accelerate in the deployment of the DPP. And nothing is done overnight. What we try to do is to actually test very early on and to work with early adopters so that we can learn whether or not we are going in the right direction, collect as much feedback as possible, and then understand what are the helpers that are needed by the ecosystem to accelerate the deployment of the specifications and to be compliant. In short, we have experience in doing this. There is no playbook that is applied to all cases. We will need to discuss it in great detail, but I believe that we will definitely be there with services that will support the deployment of the specifications and ensure that you are indeed compliant to them. And at the same time, the extreme case where the Commission would be providing all services instead of the ecosystem, that is not doable. And therefore we have to understand, okay, can we enable the ecosystem without actually taking too much on the shoulders of the Commission? Because in terms of sustainability, that has never proven to be the right way to go forward. And we speak from experience, so I can assure you of that. Maybe you want to complement, Michele?
I think you said it all, Joao. Nothing to add. I would like to give the floor to Michael Schaffer now.
Thanks. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Great. Yeah, I'm from Bosch. That's a German supplier. And I'm working on digital identities since a few years. And I have a question to you, one of your slides previously. You have shown some ideas and scenarios for decentralized and centralized approaches. And similar discussions have happened in the activities related to the future European digital identities in EIDAS 2.0. Are those activities in some way linked that we as an end customer or also as a company don't need to support two different systems?
Yeah. Joao, you want to provide details about that?
Yes, that would take us quite far, but indeed the people that are here with you are also involved somehow with the UDI initiative, as I explained, and you could see it on our slide. So there is no direct link. Nonetheless, there can be opportunities, right? Specifically when we look at the parts of the DPP that are subject to access rights. And there we can explore innovative ways to manage access rights, which are essentially much more distributed and open. And that is eventually where UDI could play a role in the future. I don't think there is a direct dependency either, but we are not excluding that, let's say, opportunity in case it presents itself. We have quite some experience with verifiable credentials. We have quite some experience in enabling what we call self-sovereign, in this case, access rights. So all those experiences will be taken into account when we design this quite challenging bit, which is actually to be able to provide a solution for access rights that are extremely scalable and flexible, but at the same time secure and controlled. I hope I answered your question.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you. Next in line is Tabea, please.
Yeah, hello. Thank you very much for your presentation. So my question is considered the second lifetime of a product. That means how will your system link between have a link, or will it have a link between different DPPs or products? I just imagine that a recycler getting a product and then creating new resources, that this is somehow linked. So are there any plans of it, or will this be possible?
Yes, as I mentioned, one of the three areas for which we are introducing the DPPs is indeed the dimension of circularity and recyclability, and this can be seen in two ways. One is to make available to the recyclers more and more specific information on the materials that get to them, which of course will be again a product specific issue, because even the typology of the data carrier and its positioning will depend from product group to product group. It will depend on the condition of use of the product. So it's not just that you print you glue a QR code on a product and that's it. For example, in the case of batteries, we are requesting the QR code to be engraved on the batteries, just to give an example. So because the readability of the information at the end of life is also a technical parameters that we will keep into account when developing the delegated act. Because as I mentioned, one of the requests was coming from the recycler, which basically tell us a lot of things do not happen because they don't know what exactly is, for example, the chemical composition of a certain component of a product. So that is one part of the role of the DPP that we see. And the other is once a material is recycled, so enters into a second life, how to transfer that information to the new product. Now, that is something that becomes a little bit more technical, where the horizontal framework, so the ESPR, does not provide the details of how this will happen. Partly is because we want to further investigate what is technically feasible, and then once we will have a better understanding on what is technically feasible from an IT perspective, but also from the point of view of access rights management perspective, then we will specify in the delegated acts how this will happen for the product groups where we expect this to be an issue, a relevant issue. So not yet all the informations are available at this stage, but they are under our radar. So we know that is one of the issues that we need to address.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I see now Julianne. Please.
Yes, good afternoon. Julianne Adams. I'm the CEO of the European Electronics Recyclers Association. And actually, the previous person was actually very apt in terms of similar topic. How have you actually interacted with e-waste recyclers across Europe in terms of how they may be able to or want to actually access a DPP? Because I'm not sure that perhaps it's realised that e-waste comes into most e-waste recyclers in 20-ton containers, 10 containers a day, and they won't have the time capability or personnel available to scan DPP codes. For non-commercial, non-household e-waste, it's potentially useful, but for domestic household e-waste, you know, I can't see it's actually going to be practical at all. So I just wondered how you'd got, if you'd actually spoken to them and how you'd got to that conclusion.
Well, the conclusion is based on multiple studies that we have carried out and multiple meetings that in the past we, and especially for these security issues where the colleagues in DG Environment were mostly following this part. So this was one of the issues that we asked to be looked at when we carried out the impact assessment in preparation of the legislation, and the consultant that did the preparatory study for the impact assessment confirmed that based on the evidence and the consultation with stakeholders that they had, this was an issue. So that is our starting point, of course, and I keep repeating it because it's very important to remind that it will be a product by product decision. Not all products, not for all products. I mean, first of all, not all products will be regulated. So there will be priority products that will be regulated through the SPR. So among the products that will be regulated through the SPR, then some products, the DPP will mostly be there to provide information on what happened until the manufacturing of the product itself. And for some other products, as I mentioned, there will be also relevant information for the circularity end of life of the products. Moreover, the other elements to be kept in mind is that, for example, when it comes to electronics or to energy using and energy related products, there is already another system to provide information, which is, at least for the products that have an energy label, the April database, and that will continue to be working. So whenever a product is in April, there will be no DPP. So again, it's a case-by-case discussion. Now, on the technicality of how to implement a system that is able to read, quickly scan QR codes or other type of identifiers, that is something that where we are also investing through research funds in order to see if there are new developments from the technological viewpoint. But the discussion on the specificities of the product groups will be held when and if we decide to regulate those product groups.
Okay, thank you. I mean, you know, you're most welcome to come and visit any of our members so you can see how it works itself, because none of our members have time to look at the database you were talking about or the I4R platform, which has similar information.
Yeah.
And so the value of DPP to e-waste recyclers is probably going to be extremely limited. I'm also the CEO designate for EBRA, the European Battery Recycling Association, and you know, the recyclers will have the same you know, issues as in the volumes arriving and the state that it's in, because it's all dirty and broken and so on. And so a DPP is not necessarily going to be practical in terms of use. But if you'd like to come and visit any of them, please let me know. Thank you.
I will extend the invitation to the colleagues in the environment who are also here today with us, so they may also want to contribute to that. What the last thing I wanted to say is that I don't want to give the impression that we are pushing the DPP as a predefined solution. For each delegated act, the normal approach from the Commission is that we always run a specific impact assessment where all the pros and cons of any policy solution that we push forward, any requirement is carefully assessed. There are plenty of stakeholder consultation where evidences on the pros and cons of what we are proposing are put forward. So it wouldn't be the first time that if there are clear evidence that the solution that we have in mind for a certain product group does not work, then we will not implement it. So these kind of comments are very welcome, and when the moment will come that we will regulate those product groups, then I'm sure we will come back to these discussions.
Yeah, thank you. I don't want to sound negative. I'm just trying to be practical. And obviously, I think there is certainly, you know, an interest to consumers if they're looking for greener products or so on. But it needs to be practical. That there is potential for artificial intelligence as technology improves.
Mm-hmm.
Our members is working on a project at the moment to identify equipment that's containing batteries, because obviously, especially lithium batteries, is very dangerous to recyclers,
Mm-hmm.
I suppose. And so a robot is being taught at the moment to recognize batteries, and in future that robot could potentially be taught to read QR codes, but that's, you know, quite a long way off.
Okay, good to know. Laura, please, you are next in line. Laura Linnala from the Swedish Institute for Standards. Laura, are you with us? We don't hear you. No, it seems that Laura is not with us. Before going into, I think, deserved break, I see that there are some questions and in the question and answer section. Let me try to address at least one of them. There is a question about the availability of the DPP for e-commerce and online platforms. That is indeed one of the requirements in the legislation. So the DPP should be available before a consumer decide to buy a product. So that yes, it is in the legislation. There again, there are some technicalities that we need to address and that we are discussing, and we will be discussing with the stakeholders. But the answer is yes, that will have also to be provided online. Let's see if Laura now is able to connect.
Yes, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Thank you. Sorry for the confusion. I just have a quick question about the timeline. You wrote in the presentation that by early 2027, the first DPPs are going to be operational.
Mm-hmm.
And around the same time, the first delegated act on ESPR regulated products should become implementable. Could you please elaborate on this? And I also wonder if you have a time plan for the coming DPPs and which groups are going to be included in that. I suppose it would be detergents, toys, textiles, etc. But please, if you have any other information to share.
Yes. So let's start from the thing that I put on the slide. I said early 2027 because that is the date when the DPP for batteries will become fully operational, and that will be the first system that will use a DPP. So in order to be fully operational in early 2027, we need to have all the standards available by early 2026, at least 1 year before, to give companies and other service provider enough time to, to do the testing, to do any change that is required in the IT system or in the procedures, so that then companies can fulfill the legal requirements in time. And that is why we have December 2025 as a deadline for the draft standardization request. Now, as far as the other legislation is concerned, I don't have in front of me the timeline for toys and detergents, but I have more clarity about the ESPR, even if it's not full clarity yet. Why? Because we are still in the co-decision process, as William will explain to you probably after the break. The Parliament and the Council are still proposing amendments that will have to be agreed with the Commission. That means that the real entry into force of the regulation will probably be sometime next year in 2024. And then we will need to start preparing the delegated act. I mean, in some cases we already started. For example, for textiles, there was already a commitment from the Commission to regulate them as to the group, so the preparatory work already started for textile. But in general, we will have to start working on the delegated act, and that takes time. It's in order to be able to do a job, we need some time. And then after the delegated act are adopted by the Commission, there is a so-called transition time. That is a period of time when the legislation is not yet enforceable, and this is given. I mean, we introduced the transition time to allow again companies to get ready and prepared for the implementation of the legislation itself. Now, how long will be the transition time is again something that is a matter of discussion with the Parliament and with the Council. So all of this to say that when it comes to ESPR, an average estimation of the timing could be that the entry into force may be around early 2027. It may be later in 2027, but I mean, more or less that is the ballpark we are looking at.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.